Welcome to Mzansi Political Safari. My name is Lavesh and I am your host. Today I am joined by Abel Tau, leader of the Transformation Alliance. Abel, welcome to the show. I hope you are doing well.
I am doing well, Lavesh. Thank you for having us and good morning, Molweni, good afternoon, Dimacheroni, Goeiedag, and everything in between. Hello, South Africa and the world.
Now, Abel, the first question I have for you is why TTA and not join another party?
Look, I think, Lavesh, more than anything, you would appreciate that I left unceremoniously as the MMC of Housing and Human Settlements in the city of Tshwane. And subsequent to that, I actually established a party in partnership with a church. And subsequent to that, that project, I felt that I wanted it to be much more, diverse and inclusive. I think that's the word. And we couldn't agree in the modalities, and subsequently, I had to decide to allow them to continue with that party and hence the formation of the TTA. The Transformation Alliance was an amalgamation of a few parties that came together to form an alliance in the pursuit of transformation, basically, and hence the name Transformation Alliance. But look, I can be honest with you that South Africa does not need as many parties as we currently have. And I think one of the things that we really need to get right, both as leaders and as supporters of parties, is to make sure that we really come to a point where we find space to support parties in a manner, because most of these parties really speak the same language, and there needs to come a point where these parties merge and amalgamate.
Okay, I definitely agree with you. We have too many parties. I always use the example of, let's take America for example. The US has two major parties that always contest the elections, and everybody just, they have a choice between the two, which allows them to choose properly instead of having to split the votes, fight with everybody, carry on for themselves, everybody trying their own agendas, etc. So I do agree with you on that. Definitely a way to go. We need to look at that. Like I see the multi-party charter is there as well now. Like you said, the TTA is an amalgamation of parties. So it's definitely the way that the country needs to go if we want to see change in the country in its entirety.
Yeah, if you look at the multi-party charter, it's very unfortunate because it looks like an amalgamation, but it's not. What South Africa needs is, if truly those parties believe that they have a lot in common to work together, therefore they need to come to a point where they can agree to fuse into one party, where only one party can go to the ballot and all the other parties work with that one party to pursue a common goal. And I think until then, it's still really not where it is, but it's a step in the right direction. And hence, what we envisage doing is something not similar to the multi party charter, but in fact, something that responds to what the ANC is doing. Because if you remember in the history of this country, when in the height of apartheid and the size of the giant apartheid was and the problem it was, it needed an alliance and a cohesion of all progressive forces, as they used to call it back then, where all of these forces work together behind one vehicle, which was the ANC. To this day, you have the tripartite alliance that still works as an alliance from that era. And I think South Africa needs that kind of thinking where all these parties can come to a point where we all agree to come and merge and form a situation where we support a particular party, because when we are working together, then we can achieve more results. And I think it has been proven. South Africa has a famous slogan of stronger together. And it's unfortunate that when it comes to politics, we believe that we are stronger as individuals.
I definitely agree. Definitely agree. Okay, now the biggest question that I have, and I think a lot of our listeners would have the same question. will your party be running for any specific positions? If so, are they provincial? Are they national? And how are they structured? More specifically, is there anything that you're going to be running for specifically?
Look, Lavesh, our party is specifically, it is a national party. We are, very active in Limpopo, in Gauteng, in the Northwest, in the Western Cape, and in Mpumalanga. So we're well represented and part of KZN. Therefore, we believe that we need to really, really, really work hard in this election. The idea at the beginning was to go at it alone, obviously as an amalgamation of these parties. But we are in talks and finalizing talks, which we should make announcement either early next week or later this week, just before the closing of the election cycle now. Basically, what we are saying as a party is to say we need to work together more. So I do believe that I would be running as Premier of Gauteng. I believe that I have what it takes to really take this province forward. Panyaza has failed. Soli has killed Tswane. Funzi from Action SA, who these are all the possible options, has really not demonstrated the kind of mettle that you need to lead a province such as this one. Unfortunately, Rise have put through a lady called Vuiswa Shem. The poor lady really does not really want to be there. It's one of those things that's a hobby and a tick box exercise, and we really don't want a prima donna for a premier in this province. I think this province has big problems, and if Gauteng works, South Africa works. I do believe that the PA is probably going to put Kenny, and what would you expect from Kenny? So you can look at the different possible premier candidates. I'm not even going to talk about the EFF because it really is going to put a very big crook that we can have. So I can tell you now that it's going to be very difficult for us as a province. And the ANC has its own internal problems stemming from their previous conference in the province. And then you then look at, again, Action SA has the same thing where they were in the papers last week because they can't agree who should lead the province. Because correctly, those who are saying the premier candidate cannot lead the province are correct. The man is out of his depth. But equally, you look around, the same thing with the DA. They've brought in a man who was disgraced so many times and has proven to collapse the city of Tshwane and everything else. So really, there is absolutely no one who can take us forward as a province. And I believe that I have what it takes. I have proven, myself over time. And therefore, you need this time not to gamble with a province as important as Gauteng. And therefore, I believe that I have what it takes. And I hope that your listeners at home would look at me and say, wow, this is actually our premier in waiting. And they should vote for us when that time comes on the 29th of May.
Okay. Okay. Let's see what happens. It's like you said, with so many parties, it's going to be such a wild game. It's very hard to decide at the moment. It really is. Okay. Now, as you can see by my lighting, it looks a bit different compared to usual. Biggest reason for that is our major issue that we have in South Africa, load shedding. The schedule was changed just before we started the interview, of like an hour or two before, and I didn't realize that I actually had load shedding. So yeah, um, what what exactly do you have a particular plan? Let's say for Gauteng alone, not focusing on the country. Let's say just Gauteng, is there a particular plan that you have? Like, I know the Western Cape was looking at moving to a solar where they move away from Eskom, and that would you think that something like that would work for Gauteng, seeing as though it is the industrial hub basically of the country? We have a lot of businesses here that keeps the economy going, and we definitely need to have power all the time because we are losing a lot of money with that. So do you have a specific plan for Gauteng, or is it just we just need to work on the corruption as such to get rid of that.
Look, load shedding is man-made, and I think that becomes the starting point of us being able to respond to these challenges of load shedding. I believe that definitely a lot needs to be done. For starters, our slogan says getting back to basics. There's quite a lot of electricity that we lose through a number of ways. First and foremost, you have a lot of squatter camps where illegal connections happen, and there is losses in electricity in huge ways. So first and foremost, you want to be able to deal with it in a multifaceted way when you are dealing with Gauteng in particular. So first and foremost is that you need to deal with household consumption to make sure that you respond adequately. There's a lot of habits that are not correct. And I think it comes from years of abundance, but also years of not paying as South Africans. That has led us to a space where we do not value the commodity right now, that is electricity, which should not be commodified, by the way. Now, I do think that as Gauteng, we really need to respond. Like I said, there's a number of power stations that were owned by municipalities. Tshwane had some that are derelict and out of use at this stage. Those need to go back into the grid and make sure that we supply. But yes, we need to have viable schemes as Gauteng to ensure that households get onto your PV system, your solar powered system, and we move away from the grid as much as we possibly can. There needs to be a lot of work that is done in terms of how we construct cities of the future in terms of the green energy. We have a lot of sun as a country, but also as Gauteng, there's really a lot of good weather to be able to generate electricity from a number of ways. Not so long ago, I took a stroll around the other side of Bujanala in Hartbeespoort Dam, and I know that that was a hydropower plant. At some point, it is no longer working. So there's genuinely the whole issue of maintenance, this whole issue of making sure that we educate society. There's whole issue of unlearning bad habits and learning new habits. There's a whole issue of incentivizing people who get off the grid or who we then build into municipalities what they call embedded generation, where we can buy back from households that have excess electricity and make sure that it is worth their while. So there's quite a lot of work, but government must set the pace for change to happen. It's the same as right now, South Africa is far behind on the EVC, electric vehicle revolution. And we are going to be caught napping again as a country where the world is moving into EV and they're changing, the technology and infrastructure to make sure that the future can actually happen in their countries. And that's not what we are doing. We are still investing in grants when we should be investing in technology that is going to advance this country, in jobs of the future, where we should be investing into R&D. And that's not what we are doing. And by so not doing that, we are actually, as a country, disinvesting into the future of this country. And we'll be shocked 25 years down the line that things are worse than what they are today. And that is what this election is also about. This election is about making sure that we make the kind of decisions that will ensure that 25 years from now, our kids can look at us and say, you guys were a bunch of smart guys. You saw the future in our eyes and look at where we are today. That is the responsibility we carry as this generation. And that is what keeps us passionate about what needs to be done.
Thank you. Thank you. I do agree. Research and development is a very big part of what countries need to be focusing on now, especially with the technological revolution and that because things are changing at a rapid pace, a very rapid pace. If you look at artificial intelligence and that, I mean, my current background that you can see that I have behind me was all generated by AI. So, I mean, the detail in it is unbelievable. So we have to look at definitely focusing on pumping money into technological advancements. If not even maybe uh, giving money to technological companies locally to build them up again and fix them and get them working on a global scale so that they can bring in more money and investment to South Africa as well.
Mm, mm.
Okay.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct.
Okay. And then one final one before we call it a night. Um, this is something that I put to Irfan from Rise last week. I told him I'll give you 2 minutes to talk about why we should vote for your party, but he told me giving a politician 2 minutes is very difficult. So I'm going to double that time. I'll give you 4 minutes. Tell tell myself and the listeners why we should vote for TTA in the upcoming election.
Look, in the upcoming elections, TTA is saying we really need to be bold and radical in how we address number one, crime. I think crime in this country has for far too long been an area that has not been addressed. The reason why you see the rise in construction mafia, in the lawlessness, in every aspect of lawlessness. Right now, South Africa kills more people than people in a war zone, and it cannot be correct. This has a downstream effect on the investment that needs to be done because we cannot create jobs in a country that is dysfunctional, where crime is rampant, because anyone who has to invest in your country has to know that their investment is safe. And by safe is that they can bring in the necessary expertise to ensure that their business thrive in your country. Now, that cannot happen because no executive can want to come into a country where their wife runs the risk of being raped at any given point, or they run the risk of being shot at a traffic light in broad daylight, and they run a risk in all sorts of ways. So we need to deal with the issue of crime, and TTA is simply saying we are going to be very, very decisive. We are going to ensure that the judiciary is up. Let's give them the adequate training to respond to the criminals of today, but also that the police are properly trained, that they are well resourced, that the whole criminal justice system is able to respond. And above everything, we need to make sure that we respond to in rapid time. That means we need to make sure that we learn from the lessons of 2010 World Cup. Let's have specialized court that deal with these violent crimes. Two, let's be decisive on GBV. Three, still talking about that, let's deal with corruption decisively so that we actually demonstrate that those who are corrupt will face time, and therefore this country will build confidence in other people to make sure that they can invest in this country. Let's revolutionize our education system. It's still archaic. It still does not respond to the needs of today and produce the kind of skills that this country need in order for us to move forward. And then finally, as we move, let's create jobs. Honestly, there is nothing as undignified as people living in a space where the kind of poverty it is. We can't be having the kind of people on social grants. It can't be a welfare state. Therefore, we need to be able to create jobs, and create jobs we can. But even the jobs that are available, we need to be creative. We can't have entry-level jobs that are not protected for South Africans. This country is in a crisis. Young people don't have jobs. You can't have foreign nationals being drivers, security guards, and everything and everything. I know it sounds like picking on the little guy, but the essence of what we are saying is let's make sure that we protect South Africans first and put them first in making sure that we can turn this country around. When they have confidence in the leadership that they have, then we can intervene on all other areas that we need to intervene. But really, as the Transformation Alliance, we are saying, let's get the basics right. Before we start talking about AI and other fancy things and EV technology and all these things, let's get the basics right. Let's make sure that as a country, we can keep you safe. Let's make sure that when you need to go job seeking, you can actually find a job. And let's make sure that as a country, we actually can provide the kind of education that can produce better leaders as we move forward. Once you've got those basics correct, then the rest will fall into place and we can grow as a country from that point.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so
I hope
much
I
for
did well
joining
on
me.
my
And
2 minutes.
you definitely did. Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Abel. I look forward to hearing everybody's comments on the interview, and I hope that you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. You were listening to the Mzansi Political Safari. My name is Lavesh. Have a good evening.